Hi, and welcome to another episode of Living with FASD, an educational and human interest show for those who are impacted by prenatal exposure to alcohol, their loved ones, and anyone interested to learn more about fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, brought to you by someone with both professional and living experience with an FASD. Today, I am so excited to bring back Jenn Wisdahl, who is the Chief Operating Officer of FASD United. She was on the show back in September talking about, or was it the very end of August?
Might have been August.
I think it was the very end of August, talking about everything that FASD had coming up, which included Impact Week, National Impact Week in Washington, D.C., where so many lucky dogs got to spend a week celebrating together all the good work that they've been doing for all of us who are impacted by FASD one way or another. Jenn, welcome back to the mic. I'm so glad to have you back on Living with FASD. What is going on? Tell me, what all did I miss?
Oh my gosh, there was a lot. It was a jam-packed week. We had people coming in from all over the US and Canada, which was pretty exciting. And, we started off the week with a gathering of our affiliates. So FASD United has an affiliate network, and that's comprised of 40 some odd organizations that work in the FASD field. Now, some of these are large organizations like the Florida Center and Proof Alliance and Illuminate Colorado. And some of these are smaller organizations that are ran 100% by volunteers working around a kitchen table. And everywhere in between. And the common ground is that they're all organizations or state, in some cases, they're like a state task force on FASD. There's a few of those that exist. Looking at you, Delaware, South Carolina. But just all organizations that are excited and excited and about working and moving forward on supporting people with an FASD, and in some cases working on prevention efforts as well. So we started off just with a meeting of our affiliate network and sharing best practices and things that had happened are happening around the country. So kind of inspiring each other to do more. And then as the rest of the country joined us, we were up to about 100 people were there, and I had some workshops on widening the circle and expanding the reach of FASD into the community. And then had the Red Shoes Gala, which was super exciting. That was really a celebration of the FASD community. It was held at the National Press Club, and everybody got dressed up and looked amazing. And we were very fortunate to be joined there by some of the lead authors of the FASD Respect Act. So Representative Betty McCollum came and said a few words during the reception. And then during the main event, we had Senator Amy Klobuchar come and speak, as well as Representative Trone. And we had CJ Lutke and Justin Shepard from the ALC Changemakers talk about their experience. And it was just a really good evening of celebration. And then the very next day, we popped into a briefing on the state of science. Where are we at and what's being done, and particularly in the military healthcare system. So what some of you may not know is that the military healthcare system is the largest socialized healthcare system in the States. It's the largest insurance organization in the States.
I had not realized that. And I think you mentioned that in August because you were talking about the major platforms that you guys had going, like the major projects.
Yeah.
So I
And
think you had touched on it then, but I'm always eager to learn more about what's going on with that.
well, this was really an update, not just of the that project, but also bringing in experts from around the world to inform that project too.
Very
So
nice.
we filled up a ballroom. There were probably about 200 people there for that. Um,
Wow.
yeah, all learning and growing and getting information. So it was a really great day.
So
And
were there people from other insurance companies in attendance?
not at this point,
Okay.
because this is a if you build it, they will come kind of
Y-
situation.
Yeah.
And I think that the military
Or
health,
if you serve food, and I'm assuming you did that.
well, yes. I don't work without food. It's a thing. Although I have to say, at the Red Shoes Gala, it was pretty busy. Your book was one of the silent auction items there. We were very
Okay.
grateful for that generous donation, and
Okay. My
we had
pleasure.
a couple of books from authors with FASD that were autographed, and those were one of the big hits actually of the silent
Mhm.
auction at the Red Shoes Gala. And the food was phenomenal, the 3 bites I got of it. Because it's a bit
One
like
bite of
being at a
each.
wedding. Exactly. It's a bit like being at your own wedding, right?
Yeah.
You're running around and working, and
Yeah.
don't necessarily get a chance
You're too
to
busy schmoozing.
you're too busy. Yeah, too busy with everything else. But yeah, the food was phenomenal, and we raised a good amount of money with that because there's no grants for working on policy.
Yeah.
Um, and so the funds that are raised from the Red Shoes Gala are unrestricted funds, meaning that they can be used for projects that aren't determined by a government entity or a funder, um,
Right.
thus policy work.
Yeah.
So, but getting into
So how much did you raise?
we raised total, I want to say it was like $170,000 total.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So that was we hit our mark. We were really happy with that.
Yeah.
But more important than that, what happened there was that people got engaged with the cause,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
whether they gave nothing and were there, or they gave, somebody gave $25,000. Actually, 2 people gave $25,000, which is
Wow.
pretty stinking cool.
Yeah.
Um, but really it was how people engaged with the cause, and
Yeah.
supporting of people with FASD was really the most important part behind
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
um, and these are people, some of them are already engaged in the FASD community as parents and caregivers, and others were completely outside of the
Mhm.
FASD community coming in. And that's a beautiful thing, because I think so often what we do in the FASD community is all within the circle. It's
Mhm.
all within the FASD space, and we're talking to each other, but
Right.
is it amplifying outside of that circle? And that night did that. Additionally, Hill Day, so the last day
Yes.
of Impact Week, we had a contingent of about 100 advocates, including kids, including people with FASD, grandparents, parents,
Mhm.
um, researchers, you name it. We all headed up to the hill with some great shirts that said 1 in 20, ask me about FASD, 1 in 20 isn't rare.
Yeah.
And that was fascinating because I got stopped by a security guard and said, okay, tell me, what is FASD? Right.
Yeah.
It was a great conversation starter.
Yeah.
One of the advocates got stopped in an elevator and asked about it. And it uh, just so happened that the person that asked her was a legislator, and they agreed to sign on to the bill based on that conversation in the elevator. So it's those little things, those little acts, those little
So
sparks of advocacy
I have
that
a
can make
question.
such a difference. Yeah.
Do you sell that t-shirt at the store at FASD United?
So we are working on that. We are working on
Because
adding
I
those
want to
to
put
our
my
store.
order in.
You know what? I absolutely, that was a conversation at our staff meeting today, is can
Yeah.
we make the shirts available? Because so many people have said they really want it, and it's
Yeah.
a pretty shirt. It really,
I would just toss in the suggestion, just my thing here, because it's one of my quirks. I can't stand clothes up on my neck. So get the ladies scoop neck available.
we can try. We can certainly try.
But
The good news was with the shirts that we did get, because a lot of people have issues with things up around their neck.
uh-huh.
Um, they did, they're not super tight on the neck, and it's a very
Yeah.
soft fabric. So
Yeah.
that
Okay.
was a nice thing about them. But um, going up to the hill with all of those people, and everywhere you walked on the hill that day, you would see people in the FASD t-shirts. It was
Mhm.
just kind of an amazing moment for me as an
Yeah.
advocate to see that momentum, because I've been going up to the hill quite a bit over the last couple of years,
Yeah.
and as I go, I'm never seeing this kind of thing, and to see this for the very first time, where I'm walking by and I'm seeing FASD everywhere
Yeah.
around the
Yeah.
US Capitol, was kind of cool.
Yeah.
um, so lots of meetings happened that day, lots of information sharing, and then we also had a congressional briefing. So
Okay.
we briefed the Congressional Task Force on substance use and mental health,
Mhm.
and that was fantastic.
Okay.
Sean Patrick Bousquet, a self-advocate from Texas, Justin Shepard again, Susan Shepard
Mhm.
Carlson, and Dr. Christy Petrinko all participated in that briefing.
Okay.
And we've got a video of it up on YouTube. So
Oh,
if you want to check that
awesome.
out, we
Yes.
also have a highlight reel from the gala if you want to uh,
Please send me those
view that.
links so I can include them in the show notes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. But it was just really kind of an amazing capper to the week to have this community that, me as a parent, you you don't always feel that. I know people
Yeah.
with FASD don't always feel that. And to
Yeah.
have this community en masse going
Yeah.
up to the hill
Yeah.
and demanding support for people with FASD,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, what a cool thing to have happen. And so it definitely did help move the needle. We did get a number of new co-sponsors for the
Yeah.
FASD Respect Act
So
through
what would
that.
that number be? I'm
Oh,
just
off the
curious how
top
far
of
that
my
needle moved.
head, I want to say we got like 8 new co-sponsors out of it, but I would be
Awesome.
telling tales out of school here, and I need to actually check my numbers on that. So
Okay.
but
But around about there.
roundabout there in the month
Mhm.
of September, and through that advocacy work, and some of it's still
Yeah.
coming. Like, you might
Mhm.
have a meeting with your legislator, and it takes 3 months for them to work through their process
Yeah.
of co-signing onto the FSD Respect Act. So, um, and every meeting is a valuable meeting, whether they sign
Mhm.
on to the Respect Act or not, because that's one more
Yeah.
person that is aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
And it might not be your first meeting where you meet with them. It might not be your second, your third, your fourth, even your fifth. I'm talking to you, Jenn Wisdahl, out in Florida. Um, but by hook or by crook, you will get them, and you will get
Yeah.
them engaged. And it's that act of coming back time and time again
Yeah.
that really helps solidify the relationship and helps them engage with the topic.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so, for example, my legislator, my congresswoman, she's a pediatrician. Um, so she knew about fetal alcohol syndrome
Mhm.
when I first met with her. And this time I came back, her aide said, "Gosh, Jenn, you're here so much. It's almost like, it's almost like you live here." Right.
Are
So
you the number one favorite constituent?
Probably not. I'm probably the most pesky constituent, because I'm constantly, hey, have you
We
thought
all
about
gets the
FASD when the
grease.
yeah, have you thought about FASD when it comes to that? We need a seat at the table. Have you thought
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah.
Um, and it's always done though with, you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar.
Mhm. Mhm.
So not being demanding, but being persistent, I
Yeah.
think, is the key. And one of the big lessons learned, because we came back after this big impact week, and
Mhm.
it was a lot of people, a lot of moving parts, a lot of information. We came back immediately afterwards and said, okay, now how can we do it better next year?
Yeah.
Right? Because
Well,
that's an
that's the
important piece
best
of it.
time to do that kind of brainstorming, when it's fresh in your mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest themes we came across was we need to have a way that people can participate from home,
Mhm.
because not everybody has the privilege
Yeah.
of being able to leave. I know there were
Yeah.
times in my life where there is not a chance I could have traveled outside the home
Yeah.
to work in support of anything.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, finding a way that we can invite people to be a part of this journey and be a part of this advocacy movement,
Mhm.
um, in the way that works best for them,
Yeah.
is our challenge for the new year. And I'm excited for us to meet that challenge. I think we can do it.
I am
Um,
too, because I want to participate, and I just, as long as I'm taking care of my mom, I'm grounded.
mhm. Well, and I think that's very true for many of our
Yeah.
families, that just,
Yeah.
i- I have one of my kiddos, and I know they wouldn't mind me saying this, that they don't travel well. They feel
Yeah.
really uncomfortable in
Yeah.
spaces that aren't their home. And
Yeah.
so, finding a way to accommodate that
Yeah.
and to support people, because I think that if you're not able to do something to resolve things, it can
Mhm.
feel you can feel very
Yeah.
powerless.
Yeah.
And a way to support people in finding their power is to give them something they can do.
Mhm.
And so this is where, you know, Hill Day was amazing and fabulous, and seeing all those t-shirts up on the hill and shaking hands with the politicians and doing the briefing, that was all really cool stuff.
Did
But
anyone get a picture of all of you, like, at the bottom of the steps?
we did not, because all the meetings were happening at different times,
Oh,
and yeah, they started early in the morning, and they went till late in the
okay.
afternoon. We did get a group photo at the hotel before everybody started going off to meetings, but even
Yeah.
then we missed a number of people because they were
Yeah.
already on the hill.
Yeah.
But I think where I was going with that is not that, like, the Hill Day was cool, but the bulk of the advocacy, the bulk of the work on the FASD Respect Act, the bulk of what's actually moving the needle
Mhm.
is happening from a mom sitting in her car in the pickup line for school doing a Zoom call with their congressperson.
Yeah.
These are happening from
Yeah.
home. These Zoom calls that we've been doing, that's really what's been working. It's
Yeah.
the self advocate emailing all the organizations that they know of in their area to sign on as supporters of the FASD Respect Act, from home.
Mhm.
Like, these are the things that are really moving it. So just because you couldn't be in DC, just because you couldn't be there, doesn't mean that you're not part of this fight.
Yeah.
Being in DC, that's the icing on the cake. That's cool. It's
Yeah.
amazing. It's helpful.
Yeah.
But all this other stuff that we're doing on the home front
Yeah.
is just as important, if not more so. And that's where we really need to keep the foot on the gas pedal and,
Mhm.
keep trucking forward. There's a lot of, regardless of what political party you associate yourself
Mhm.
with, there's a lot of dysfunction in Congress this year. And and so to make
That's
yourself
the
be
understatement of the year.
it is a little bit.
I did reach out to my congressman, but he's been a little preoccupied with his seat as the congressional leader. Maybe once they have a replacement, he will have time to sit down with me
Well, and you
when
can
when
also
he's
sit down with their
when he's no
legislative.
longer the speaker. He might
Exactly.
he might have more time. Bless his
But
heart.
at the same time, though, they have people who handle their healthcare portfolios.
Yeah.
Those are the people we want to meet with, because those
Yeah.
people vet everything that congressperson does, And even if that congressperson says, yes, 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 I'm going to sign off on this, they're still going to go back to their health person
Yeah.
and make sure that, hey, does this tick all the boxes? Does this go against anything that we normally would go for? So even if you can't get in with the legislator,
Mhm.
having that meeting with the health staffer is just as important, if not more so.
Okay. So is there a way of finding out who that person would be in each district?
Absolutely. Yes. So we have a list of most of them. Now,
Okay.
this is not a list that they publish. This is something that we have to find and we have to go scout out and everything. But we do have a list of most of the health LAs for most of the districts.
Okay.
So if you email Chris Melfi in my
Mhm.
office, and he's the one that helped put together Hill Day. He's amazing.
He is
Email.
amazing. Shout out
Thanks.
to Chris.
Woo, woo, woo. Um, Melfi, MELFI at FASDunited.org, or just call the FASD main number. He'll answer, and ask him for the health LA for that particular district.
Mhm.
He'll give that to you. You shoot him an email. We've got a template on our website of exactly what you can say to get the meeting, so you don't have to
Mhm.
overthink it or do it. You just bloop, cut and paste,
Yeah.
and there's a couple of documents you can attach that kind of show the impact of FASD in your state and
Mhm.
set up the meeting. Chris will set up the Zoom for you if you want him to. He'll book Susan Shepard Carlson and I to be on the call with you, so you've got some support
Yeah.
to talk about where the bill is currently, because you can
Mhm.
talk about the impact in your community. There's no expert like you in your
Yeah.
community that can talk about it better.
Yeah.
But in terms of the minutia of the bill and how the politics work and everything, most people, would rather not
Yeah.
know all that stuff.
Right. Right.
And that's where you can let Susan and I do the dirty work for you and follow that like it's football, and
Uh-huh. Okay.
and support you in meetings. So really,
Yeah.
it's and once you've done it a couple of times, it I always say it's easier than an IEP meeting.
Okay.
Of course, root canals are typically easier than an IEP meeting.
I well, I think I've only had one root canal, and apparently the drugs they use now are better than the drugs they used to use, because it really wasn't so bad.
I am very glad to hear that. And
Why, are you in need of one?
no, but I'm coming up on my kiddo on one of my kiddos' IEPs. So
Apples and
everybody knows
oranges.
in my circle of friends that if they see my red Converse on my Facebook status, I'm going in to do battle. And our school district is pretty good. Like, I joke, but they're pretty good, and they're pretty.
Yeah.
Most schools want to help if they can. They just don't know
Mhm.
how to help yet.
Right. Right.
And this is what we're working on. Now, I know there's going to be
Yeah.
a lot of people out there going, no, they're not. Oh my gosh, they just want to fight me on everything. And,
I know many
I
parents with that perspective.
exactly. And your
Yeah.
perspective isn't wrong. I'm not telling you
Yeah.
you're wrong, and I don't want to
Yeah.
minimize that in any way, shape,
Yeah.
or form. But also, there is um, sometimes the way forward can be helped by assuming the best of people.
But yeah,
And
absolutely. And I think too, it's a matter of speaking one common language,
mhm,
because language really dictates our perspective. And, we're, it seems to me in many meetings that way, parents feel condescended toward, instead of appreciated as the expert on their child. And they perceive, on the other hand, that there's just this high and mighty falutin attitude that says, I have a superior education.
mhm.
Right. And it's just unfortunate, because without that common language, the meetings so often are unproductive. Yeah.
And that common language is such a key factor
Yeah.
in, additionally in advocacy,
Hmm.
in speaking with your medical practitioners,
Mhm.
and these are things that as a community, I know we're working on.
That does, this is totally an aside, but it cracks me up when a staff will say, "Doctor will see you now." Doctor who? He has a name. It's not a title. It's like the King of England.
Are
Doctor
you
will
going to
see
bow
you
or
now.
curtsy?
Right?
I think each
Ugh,
discipline has their own specific ways of referring to things. And,
yeah.
those of us in
Yeah.
the FASD community, and I see this sometimes on our calls with legislators, is that we'll sometimes skip past things
Mhm.
that would be helpful to somebody who's just learning about this,
Yeah.
um, because this is something that many of us eat, breathe, and sleep.
I was
Um,
just gonna say that. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So
Because
it's
we say it so often, we just assume everybody already knows it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And having to explain things like, for example, I've been asked, what does FASD and abortion have in common? And, the answer is absolutely nothing, but they both can, fetal, you have fetal in it, right?
Ugh,
And so these are things that you don't necessarily anticipate. And,
yeah.
to be fair, we have from the most conservative conservatives to the
Mhm.
most liberal liberals, we have signed on to this bill. So
Mhm.
there's
And that
nothing
is so
contentious in that
amazing.
way. Well, and that's FASD. FASD
Yeah.
is not a contentious topic.
Right.
It's
Right.
just not something that we've been able to bring top of mind yet.
Yeah.
And,
We'll get there.
I'm a I'm a firm believer in every no gets us one step closer to a yes.
Mhm.
And so we're just getting our no's out of the way. That's what we're doing. And we're going to
Yeah.
work and get rid of as many of
Yeah.
those no's as possible
Yeah.
so we get to our yes. And sometimes hearing those no's and no's and no's and no's and no's can be really hard, but we can celebrate that we've gotten rid of those no's. We're past those now.
Mhm.
We're getting closer to our yes.
Yeah.
And our yes is passage of the bill so that we can start getting some funding into states to be looking at how they can include FASD into their existing silos of care.
Mhm.
How can we
Mhm.
make sure that FASD has a seat at the table?
Yeah.
We don't need
So,
to create a new table. We just want to be part of the existing conversation.
right, right. So tell me about any potential concerns surrounding all the fiscal concerns
Mhm.
that have been floating around Washington lately. I mean, that's why those 8 Republicans got rid of, uh, you know, Speaker McCarthy was over budget concerns.
Mhm.
So they are very valid concerns. How do you see that playing out? Does that um, is that necessarily a damper on our efforts?
I don't know that it's a damper because, we're not asking for a heck of a lot here. If we compare it to other disabilities,
Mhm.
it's a drop in the bucket. If we are comparing to the cost of not doing anything, and this is an analogy I give to legislators when I'm talking to them, a responsible homeowner, if you're a homeowner, even if you are dead broke,
Mm,
if you have a leak in your roof, you're going to fix the leak because you
mm,
know that if you don't fix the leak, your foundation's going to rot and your house is
yeah,
going to be of no value.
yeah,
So you're going to take care of that because you know that that's an investment in something that's important to you.
yeah,
Now, you might not get a brand new roof. You might go up there and you got the nails in your teeth and your hammer and you're fixing it yourself on a wobbly ladder. Hey, cool. You do
yeah,
what's going to work for you, but you're going to address it. And
yeah.
what we're asking for here is not for a big, shiny new roof. We're asking for it to be addressed. Now, would we love a big, shiny new roof? Heck
Hex,
yeah.
yeah,
I will fight for that till the cows come home. That is
yeah,
what we want. But we're not telling them we need the big, fancy new roof. We're telling them we need a seat at the table.
yeah, yeah,
We just want you to fix the darn roof,
yeah.
because if they don't, we as a society are paying for it down the road, because we're paying for mental health care that maybe doesn't work because it's not taking into account disability. We're
Mhm.
paying for mental health care because people aren't being accommodated properly.
Right.
We're
Right.
paying for education that isn't necessarily working because the accommodations aren't there. Like,
Yeah. We're paying for all
we're
the
paying for it
secondary
anyway.
disabilities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, that's kind of the analogy I make. And it's interesting because last year, so many of the one party wanted us to change the bill so that it didn't have a dollar amount in it. So it was such sums,
Mhm.
meaning that Congress could appropriate such sums as are necessary to um, uh, to do what they needed to do that the bill prescribed. However, this year, some of the same people are coming back saying, no, 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 we want a dollar figure in there. So some of it's a little bit of a political football. Um,
Mhm.
they call it politics for a reason, right? And it's
Yeah.
just our job to keep the message consistent,
Mhm.
keep the pressure consistent,
Yeah.
and just let them know we're not going away. This is something, we're like the drip, drip, drip on the roof. We're
Yeah.
just going to keep dripping, and we're going to keep
Squeaky
dripping,
wheel
and we're
gets
going
the
to keep dripping.
grease. Yep.
Exactly. And we're going to drip politely and
Yeah.
kindly, but we're going to drip
Yeah.
consistently.
Yeah.
And that's where our strength is, because you have never met such a determined community as the
Mhm.
FASD community, where
Yeah.
someone says no, we say, nope, we're going to find a way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And because we've had to. And so now it's just channeling that energy into advocacy. And I think that's important.
So what were some of the key takeaways? Like, was I know a number of people shared presentations.
Mhm.
What were some of the big ahas of the week?
Gosh, it's a little harder for me to answer that, only because I was involved in most of them. So they weren't necessarily an aha. They were like a, yeah.
Well,
um,
or I'm assuming that the audience reacted at various points.
I think some of the highlights, there was a panel at the State of the Science Day that had Julia Rivera from Texas, CJ Lutke, Justin Shepard, Brenna French on it, talking about lived experience
Mhm.
and living experience.
Mhm.
And there was a standing ovation for that panel, because it was really talking about, what does having a diagnosis mean to you?
Mhm.
And how important is it that you have an accurate diagnosis? What does that mean, even if you can't find services?
Yeah.
And then what services and supports are helpful or were helpful to
Mhm.
you? And, Justin really, shut the place down with a very impassioned statement about, at the end, about the supports necessary, not just for people with FASD, but also for women to support healthy pregnancies.
Mhm.
And it was said in just such an eloquent way. And like I said, standing ovation, the whole room were on
Yeah.
their feet cheering. And so that was
Yeah.
really a big one.
Yeah.
Let's see.
He's an amazing guy.
He really is. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's
I
a
got
great
to
guy.
know him just a smidge, right, at a California Now conference about a year ago, almost a year ago. I think it was November last year. Um, and he and Dr. Jones and I and one other younger woman who never, I don't think she even piped up to introduce herself. She was a fly on the wall, but it was the four of us in a breakout session. And Justin and I were just, talking about our experience of coming to realize as an adult that we're on the spectrum and what that's been like. And Dr. Jones just looked like he's watching a tennis match. But I remember sharing with Justin that, I had realized, like, 2 years before, but I was still trying to figure out how to determine, who do I tell? How do I say it? Because of the concern, not on a personal level, but on a professional level, right? Thinking about my reputation in the community and in the professional community. And he said the only way past the stigma is straight through it. And had I not had that conversation with him, I probably never would have written Sip by Sip, and I probably never would have launched this podcast. So hats off to Justin.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's a great guy. And you asked me about aha moments at at Impact Week. And one of the things I am always blown away by is the electricity surrounding people with FASD meeting and connecting with other people with FASD.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a big moment at the conference as well, at Impact Week, was really just that electricity behind this community coming together. And that's huge. I mean, there were presentations. Dr. Phil May presented, Dr. Christy Petrenko presented, Dr. Doug Waite presented, Hope Finkelstein from Alaska presented, the CDC presented, NIAAA presented. I mean, like
AAA?
NIAAA.
Oh,
yeah.
that's like, what?
Yeah, in case you got a flat on your way to the conference. No, they presented on the research that's being done. So the government agencies presented on what they were doing. In whatever capacity they were doing it on for FASD. But really, like for me personally, it's that connectivity between the community that was just so powerful and important. And, I think about it for me, and I'm just a mom. Like my living experience does not extend beyond being a mom. And that's not minimizing it. It's saying that I'm not at the front of the bus, it's people with FASD who their experiences. But I remember what it felt like to meet other parents who were traveling a similar path than me. I can only imagine what it feels like for people with the disability to be meeting other people with FASD. And
it's powerful.
The power there. So I think that was, for me, that was my takeaway. And honestly, watching two men who I really respect and admire, again, Justin Shepherd and Sean Patrick Bousquet, standing behind a congressional podium on Capitol Hill, delivering statements at a briefing. I mean, come on. That's pretty stinking cool.
Yeah. So for those more scientific presentations, what were some of the new juicy tidbits that maybe not everybody in the FASD circles know about yet?
Well, I know there are a few things that kind of came out. And again, these were more discussions around what's going on and the work that's currently being done, rather than, at some scientific conferences, they're presenting their findings, right? This was not that. So you wouldn't get that. And here's this new great big thing that they presented. Now, I know, one of the things we've heard is Dr. May did talk about a statistic different from the 1 in 20, different than the 5%. He mentioned, I want to say 6.7% in terms of prevalence. Now,
and I crunched the numbers on that, which is 1 in 15, which is, I mean, that really moves the needle on prevalence.
It does. However, I say that with a caveat, and as not being a researcher, Dr. Phil May is Dr. Phil May. And if he wants to say 6.7%, far be it from me to correct him or to check him on that. And I know he has mentioned that in other places too, and has not been corrected on it by other scientists, by other researchers. However, he has also not published on that yet, to my knowledge. And so I would caution the field because before everybody goes out and starts running around and changing it from 1 in 20 to 1 in 15. No, I heard it's 1 in 15. You can't use the 1 in 20 anymore. I would wait. I would wait until it's published. And here's why. Because if you put it out before it's published, before the evidence base exists, then we run the risk of minimizing what we're trying to do and being disproved and discredited. And that's a big risk. So, you know,
and truly 1 in 20 is not rare.
No.
1 in 20 still is a staggering statistic.
It is. And there are going to be those who listen to this and go, but wait a minute. 1 in 15 is so much more powerful. We need that message out there and that message out there now. And you're not wrong. You absolutely are not wrong in feeling that. However, on the flip side, the higher the numbers get, the harder it becomes for systems of care to conceptualize how they're going to handle something of this magnitude. So, for example, Dr. Christy Petrinko has been working on state legislation with other stakeholders in the state of New York, and working on adding FASD as a disability for waiver services in their state. And the pushback they've gotten is that at the rate of 1 in 20, they couldn't afford to do it. The agency necessary to do that couldn't afford to do it because there's just too many people. It would open the floodgates. That was some pushback they got in California. That was so if if agencies are pushing back on the 1 in 20 statistic and saying, whoa, that's too much, can't do anything.
They're definitely not going to want to hear 1 in 15.
1 in 15. Now, I'm not saying that if it's 1 in 15, if it is 1 in 15 and has an evidence base to support it, then it's 1 in 15 and we need to say that loud and clear. We want to go with what the evidence base is. But I am not Dr. Phil May. I do not have his research chops. And so until that is a published statistic, my caution would be maybe hold off. 1 in 20 is really powerful. Let's build the evidence base so we can say 1 in 15. But 1 in 20 is still a really powerful, really strong number. And if they're not listening at 1 in 20, does that mean yell louder? Or does it just mean, hey, let's have more conversations? So that's my take on it. But again, I'm not in the position of telling anybody what they can and cannot do. It's just my take on it. And this is why we as an organization aren't rushing out and changing our t-shirts and, writing over them with marker and saying, no, it's 1 in 15. Because until that evidence base exists, we need to be really cautious of our reputation of upholding the evidence. Now, Dr. May and everybody else involved in that study has stated that they were very conservative in how they crunched the numbers on the 1 in 20 study. And that work was done back in, I want to say 2017, published in 2018. I could be wrong. So I'm with that caveat, but, so he may be coming out with some other pieces of the numbers from that study. And as it's published, as that evidence base is built, okay, let's change it. But for right now, 1 in 20 is still a pretty hefty number.
It's still staggering. I mean, if you think of, if there's 20 houses on your block, then it's not one person on your block, but it's, however many the average household is, 3 or 4 people on that block.
It's a kid in every classroom. It's a person on every sports team. It's a person in every workplace. It's here. It's just we don't talk about it, we don't acknowledge it, we don't
Right.
come together around it, and we're starting to, and
Yeah.
that's
So,
the good news.
so Jen, you mentioned that this was more the focus on this particular evening was on what's being done scientifically now, right? As opposed to the results, the findings. So, what are some of the projects that are in the works at this time?
So one of the cool things that's going on is in the military healthcare system, and a lot of conversation at this during this day-long event during Impact Week was around diagnosis and support. So they're building a hub and spoke model of diagnosis within the military healthcare system. So again, patterning after how they do things in the autism community, but adding FASD into it. And then really looking at FASD as neurodiversity and
Mhm.
how it can be incorporated into the other activities that are happening around neurodiversity, but still acknowledging it with an FASD lens.
Mhm.
And I thought that was a really cool, really nuanced conversation. I really appreciated what the panelists had to say around that. Um, and
Can you break that down a little bit for our listeners or viewers in the sense that, I'm guessing that not too many people have heard of that hub and spokes model way of
Mhm,
looking at things?
right. So, looking at instead of having a multidisciplinary FASD diagnostic clinic available everywhere
Mhm.
that the military healthcare system serves, how can they have providers trained in FASD in recognizing or supporting or diagnosing, um, but also have that specialty care team that is available for consult and supporting. So they're the hub,
Okay.
and then the spokes are the independent providers. And then also doing a training model that encapsulates that hub and spoke model. So training out the different
Mhm.
spokes from the hub. And I think it's a really smart model to look at.
Mhm.
I think it's worked well for um, other disabilities, taking pages out of other playbooks,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Why reinvent the wheel?
why reinvent the wheel? But also, this is a great way to get FASD included in the
Mhm.
conversations
Yeah.
around neurodiversity,
Yeah.
and giving us a seat at the table, because
Yeah.
that's what we want. We want a seat at the table.
Mhm. Yeah, it always, it blows my mind how FASD is not included in so many of the lists of neurodivergent conditions. When the prevalence rate is what, more than double that of autism spectrum disorder, which is nothing against them, but we should have a pretty big seat
Mhm.
at the table.
We would like a seat at the table, and
Hmm.
I think that we don't get us, important. What is it? Pouring salt in your sugar don't make mine any sweeter. Um, eh,
I never heard that one.
so
That's kind of neat.
we don't want to take anything away from the autism community,
Exactly.
from the neurodiverse
Exactly.
community. We just want to be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And I think, where we've been left out of the conversation is that the focus has been predominantly over the last, you look historically, the focus has been on prevention efforts. And,
Hmm.
I firmly believe that people should know what can happen if pregnancies are exposed to alcohol.
Right.
Absolutely believe that. But also, and um, we need to be supporting people living with FASD, because honestly, sometimes people don't know they're pregnant.
Yeah.
Sometimes they might have a substance use or an alcohol use disorder. And if we truly believe, and I do, that these are um, diagnosable conditions, that means that they need help. This
Hmm.
isn't something that's done on purpose.
Right. Right.
And it can be challenging to reframe that way,
Yeah.
particularly when your lived experience and your living experience might have led to some trauma around that.
Yeah.
I understand, but I think in focusing on the people living with FASD, that allows us to engage more into that neurodiversity space. It allows us to engage more into the disability space, because then we're really focused on the people living with FASD. And that aligns with what other disabilities are attempting to do. And it brings us into that community as opposed to holding us separate, because we just want to prevent this.
Right.
Well, no, we recognize that there are people with this and we would never want to prevent them.
Right.
So how do we engage with the disability
I
community
love
to support
that.
them instead?
I love that. We would never want to prevent the existence of the people who are living with an FASD.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, I've thought about this a lot because, my 3 kids have it. And do they have challenges because of FASD? Yeah. Do they have gifts and strengths also? And would they be the same person if they didn't have an FASD? And would I miss that person that they are if that didn't exist?
Yeah.
And again, for some families, that may not be your truth. There may be chaos and confusion and things happening that are really hard. And so seeing things in that light may not be possible in all cases. And I recognize that. But for me, that's kind of my realization I've come to in it. And bottom line is, people deserve support. People deserve support for their disabilities. And, we shouldn't be standing in the way of that. So let's help them get it.
What a beautiful sentiment for us to probably wrap things up, because we've been talking for about an hour already. I know, Jenn, this is your second time on the show, and both times I just feel like I could keep this going. But
your listeners might get a bit tired of my voice.
Right. Well, no, not right to that, but it's like, I know you and I have, we've got dinner to prepare for our families.
It is my husband's birthday, so I need to give a shout out to the best hubby ever
Happy
on
birthday,
his
hubby.
birthday. And he's good people. So I gotta go.
Well, of course he's
make
good
a birthday
people.
cake.
There you go. What flavor are you making?
Is there any other flavor than chocolate? This is a hill I will die on.
Okay.
There's
Fair
no
enough.
other flavor for me.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Well, if you ever come
Patty.
down to Bakersfield, there is a Tex-Mex restaurant that has the best chocolate cake in the city. And personally, I think it's not the cake. It's all about the frosting.
This is good, because the frosting can make or break the cake. If it's a good frosting that's not too sweet, but also not too, what is it? Cream cheesy.
Yeah.
Because if it's too cream cheesy, I'm out, man. But no, if it's not too sweet, not too cream cheesy, just the right balance, fluffy.
Well, I will be with you in spirit, enjoying a piece of cake.
Well, thank you.
And the
Patty.
nice thing about doing it this way is it won't jack up my blood sugars.
Virtual cake.
There we go.
Fantastic.
So I think I cannot thank you enough for spending this time with us here on Living with FASD and sharing a few gems from National Impact Week. I'm so excited, and I can't wait until I can go in person sometime, right? Just like I can't wait until I can attend a Vancouver or Seattle conference. Right.
Well, it's coming up in April.
But like I
you'll
said,
be there next year or the year after that.
As long as I'm caring for my mom, I'm kind of grounded. And it can't be the Vancouver conference or Seattle conference. Is it changing its name now?
Well, it's technically the 9th International research conference on adolescents and adults with FASD. That's its real name, but that's a mouthful.
It
So
is. So
yeah, we'll call it the Vancouver
yeah,
conference for another year, and then probably it'll switch over to
the
Seattle
Seattle
conference because
conference.
it's
Yeah.
in Seattle, and there's
Yeah.
there's great coffee, and there's orcas, and
Yeah.
there's salmon, and there's all the fun things
Yeah.
about Seattle. So there's the Space Needle and the Weedle on the Needle. Um,
The Weedle on the Needle.
the Weedle on the Needle. This is a story you learn as a kid growing up in Seattle about the Weedle on the Needle.
Okay, I'm
It's
gonna have to Google that.
the creature that makes the red on the top of the Space Needle. It's
Okay.
the Weedle on the Needle.
Alrighty.
So
I'm gonna have
join
to
us in
Google that.
April for the Weedle on the Needle.
I cannot allow, unfortunately, the Seattle conference to be my first vacation after my mother departs, simply because my husband has also been grounded for 4 years now. And I'm sure there's somewhere else he'd rather go first.
That is fair and valid. And may your mother live many years. May you miss the Vancouver conference
Oh,
for many years for that reason alone.
thank you, but no thank you. Because she's suffering. Yeah. Yeah. So, bless her heart.
My thoughts are with you on that. That is
Yeah.
a challenging thing for families, and I wish her nothing but the best care, which I'm sure
Yeah.
you're providing.
I'm doing my best.
Yeah.
And she continues to drink every night. She's been sober for 3 years and has no idea that I've been refilling the same 6-ounce bottles of wine with alcohol removed Merlot.
Oh dear.
Order it by the case and hide it and refill those puppies. She has no clue she's sober. Bless her heart. I wish I could figure out how to do that with her cigarettes.
That's a hard one.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
that I really think that in fact, I'm trying to think of who I was talking with. It was probably either Robbie or Natalie. I really believe that there's a likelihood that she and her brother could have been exposed as well. And some of us have our issues with addictions. So, yeah, if you haven't listened to the episode that was live this week, so October 10th, it's one of the ALC members, Shannon Butt, talking about FASD and addictions. And she's a remarkable young lady, a remarkable journey. And it was an honor to be part of her sharing her story. So, and it is an honor to have you on Living with FASD once again.
Well, thank you, Pat.
I look forward to having you back another time. So you can give us another call to action when the time is appropriate. But for now, I would summarize that as, if listeners or viewers have not already contacted FASDunited.org and gotten their legislators to do that and send off those emails, not only to them, but also to that other list of health legislator assistants or legislator aides, right? That's what an LA is a legislative aide.
Legislative assistant.
Yeah. So, so that would be your primary call to action for the audience at this point.
Absolutely. This is
Okay.
what we need. Contact your 2 senators and your rep.
Yeah. What about that education survey that you were doing for a while? Is that still going on?
It's closing as of the end of the month. So
Okay.
if, we definitely are still looking for people to contribute to that. So, if you're able to do that before the end of the month, really, we need more people with FASD and more educators. Even if they don't know anything about FASD, that still tells us something.
Yes, it
Um,
does, doesn't it?
yeah. So,
Okay.
the more people we can get participating in that, the better.
So
Um,
I think that the air date for this episode is next week, I think, which will still give the audience time to get involved with that survey and help out with that important work.
Great. Yeah. They can link to that through our
So
website. It's right there in the front. And
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
appreciate anybody who has or is going to fill out
yeah,
that survey.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again, Jenn, for coming on Living with FASD. I can't believe another episode has wrapped up that
There you
quickly.
go.
Wow. Where does the time go, right? Time flies when you're having fun. But or
Exactly.
when you're wrapped up in a really good conversation. So if people are listening while they're driving, I hope the miles just ticked by and you've reached your destination safe and sound and thought, oh, that trip wasn't so bad.
That is a
Right?
great way to take in podcasts. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Audible. That's that's when I do most of my reading. It's when I'm driving back and forth to Bakersfield. Oh, all
Uh,
right.
all right. Thanks,
Until
Patty.
next time, Jen, and for the rest of everyone who is watching or viewing, tune in again next week for another episode of Living with FASD. Don't forget to come back to my YouTube channel, which is at Patricia Casper, your FASD coach. On Fridays, I have the other content stream, which is Free Friday Tidbits, which is little short 5-10 minute snippets on just some nuggets from the neurobehavioral or model, which is just ways of understanding behavior a little bit differently. So tune in for those. Those come out every Friday morning. This podcast comes out every Monday morning. If you want to have someone come in and train on FASD, I do that as part of my business. It's part of trying to see things go further, right? If I can teach other mental health professionals or educators about neurodiversity, about FASD, then that multiplies all my efforts, because once you learn this stuff, you can never unlearn it. And the impact will just keep going like ripples in a pond. So also feel free to hop on over to Facebook and join the community. If you look up your groups tab, you can find it under Living with FASD podcast. So I kept the name unoriginal, but easy to find. And you can also email me at livingwithfasdpodcast@gmail.com and give me any suggested topics that you might want to listen to an episode about. And I will do my best to find an expert to be able to do an episode on that. And then any questions that you have. If you have any questions for Jenn, let me know in the email. And don't forget to read your show notes, and you can get all those links that Jenn and I talked about. And you can also find a link to pick up a copy of my book on Amazon. So Sip by Sip, Candid Conversations with People Diagnosed with Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorders, or FASD. And it's just a wonderful way of recognizing all the different ways that FASD presents. So until next week, take good care, and we'll see you next Monday on Living with FASD.